right, everybody. It's Michael Falato here from Full Throttle Leaders. We have another great guest today, James Oliverio
Yeah, Oliver, it's good. Close enough.
from ideaBOX. I've known him for about 6 to 12 months. Great guy. I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. What grabbed your attention to even want to do a podcast with Michael Falato today?
It might look just more outreach. I really appreciate putting this together, but more outreach and kind of spread the word to some of the companies out there that can maybe thinking or struggling with cybersecurity
Mhm.
or the challenge with cybersecurity and AI around it. We just approach it very differently, and we're just trying to get our message out there, to the community that we approach it a little bit differently.
So tell me a little bit about your company, why you built it, and what you actually did up to this point. Like, so what kind of got you to build this company?
Yeah, I mean, spent time on Wall Street as a tech jockey in my early career, and then that career blossomed, and I was encouraged after becoming a CIO of an investment bank. Banks merge, things fall out. Those bankers say, "Hey, come with us over to this other firm," which I did back in the early 2000s. That was UBS. Went from Credit Suisse. It was DLJ was the original company. Donaldson, Loken and Jenrette was purchased by Credit Suisse. And about a year later, those bankers said, "Hey," a bunch of bankers said, "Come with us over to UBS and set up the IT structure there." I did about a year there, and then they said, "Go start a business," which I had no clue what to do. But I started a company, an IT firm, which blossomed into a managed services company. I sold that in 2015, and I came out of the market for a little bit about 10 years ago. Did some private equity, another MSP we're building out. I decided from a program I enrolled in 2019 at Harvard University. It was called Mitigating Risk in the Information Age. I decided to resurrect a company that I owned, the brand called ideaBOX, and bring a different focus around cybersecurity, things I took out of that program at Harvard, which we focus on. There were three things I learned, right? We took apart all the major breaches several years ago in that program, and it was three things we learned. The separation of duties was number one. You can't be the CIO and the CISO. And I believe out of that program, fast forward to today,
CIO.
most most organizations well, are we is the audio okay?
Yeah, you said the CIO and what?
CIO and CISO, Chief Information Officer and
Oh,
Security Officer can't be the same.
yeah. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I heard the right.
Yeah. And secondly was those firms like Sony, Target, Equifax, and the NSA. What did they learn, post-mortem on their breaches? It was the unstructured data that was stolen that created their greatest vulnerability and risk.
And when
And then,
people don't understand structured data and unstructured, what is like the layman's
yeah.
for that?
So the unstructured data is Word documents, spreadsheets,
Yeah.
PowerPoint. The structured data would be your databases, things that are secure, you think they're secure, but sit in repositories in an enclave and you know where to go to get it. But the unstructured stuff, attachments, has sensitive information like credit card and other,
Yeah.
creates the greatest vulnerability.
Okay. Thank
And then lastly was how do you quantify this stuff? And that's where I spent a good amount of my time in the last few years. ROM. What is ROM? Return on mitigation, which is helping organizations essentially quantify that risk in a way that is meaningful. Um, and that's what I've been up to.
you. You explained to me, I think like in 90 seconds last time we spoke, like what you do. So to break it down for our audience. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, really simple. We identify the invisible liability
Hmm?
for companies, why data is the most mispriced asset, on your balance sheet. No one's really focused on the question of if we were to experience a breach, what data that's unstructured creates our greatest vulnerability? And no one's really gone through that mechanism of it. Security in general, right? The perimeter, people think there's a false, a false thing that firms fall into. My perimeter is structured, pen testing, and the rest. Security is not the exposure to visibility, right? Moving from the perimeter defense to financial liability quantification is what we focus on. So, when you look at the illusion of security, I passed my audit, you know, uh, but do you really know who has access to your data? What AI tools that your employees are using? Are they perhaps maybe exposing some of the data that you're supposed to keep protected up to the large language models? So,
What's a thing that you learned in the last 6 months that either was a great idea, like, hey, this thing worked, I came up with a new idea for my client, for myself, or or system or technology, or secondly, what's something you figured out like that was a really bad idea and I learned from it, but that I don't want to do that again. Lesson.
well, I guess our messaging, leading with tools and showing, cybersecurity is just a broad universe and honing down to focusing, saying, listen, we focus on the liability that most firms really, go undetected and focus more of our messaging around return on mitigation, which is quantifying the financial return of reducing measurable exposure, right? What investment, in order to figure that out, what data do I think creates the greatest risk? Do I know where it is? Can I track it and monitor it? And then put some metrics around that. That's a better strategy than, gee, we got breached. We know what was stolen and everything's questionable. That's how most firms deal with breaches. After it's in the rearview mirror, and that's unfortunate, and it's fixable.
It's reactive versus being like,
Proactive, yeah.
who's your ideal customer profile for your company?
It's mid-sized to small to medium to mid-sized companies, financial services, healthcare, companies that want to keep data sacred. I mean, it's just I think there's just not, the ones that were because regulation drives it, healthcare, for sure. They've got a requirement to keep certain data protected. But I think this is very broad. We're approaching it very different than anybody else out there, literally. Not that I just try to focus on what makes us different. You know, I'm not really enamored with that. There's a lot of business out there in the cybersecurity sector. We just approach it a little bit pragmatically from a perspective of how do I speak to the C-suite? What could you measure and quantify and give them data, their data, if you will? What do you want to do with this? Do you want to discard it, get rid of it, protect it? And the remediation piece is we do file level protection encryption. This brand here that I carry on the sheet, this shirt, is called Actifile. It's a company I partnered with to help devise and develop the whole ROM concept. And the back dashboard you see here is quantifying someone's data risk almost near real time and give them opportunities to make decisions on what they want to keep protected. No end user involvement.
And who do you likely deal with inside these light enterprise companies?
We deal with sometimes with the compliance people, but we ultimately end up with the IT people. Either they're MSP, inside IT people, because our tool that's part of our messaging and our value proposition requires that we sit on the desktop or workstation or server. So it's an agent we need to deploy that keeps this thing, if you will, in balance to look at the data that's coming in and out.
So,
So
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 MS,
we do end up with the IT people, working with IT people.
MSP, you're working with them to deploy. Do you sell to them and they sell to their clients?
Pretty much, yeah. I do both. I mean, MSP wants to own the relationship or manage, allow us to manage the platform for them on their behalf and focus on the conversation of return on mitigation. So we give them we become an extension of the MSP. I work with several MSPs as their security arm because they don't want to develop that skill set, hence giving them some separation of duties, right? And there's others that I just go direct. If they have their inside IT person, we'll show them this new metric that they can use and leverage that turns maybe an expense into a strategic opportunity.
So if you can quantify or almost give like a, hey, this is kind of a case study which you don't have to mention someone's name, but like I like looking at challenger customer type things. Like you had a $600,000 problem, I solved for $60,000 because you employed what I suggested. I helped you decide what exactly you needed to protect yourself from. Do you have any type of like,
Oh yeah, I've got several. I've got several. The one I like to use the most is last year this time, the client received a phone call from the FBI, and this is the way it went down. Hi, this is the FBI. We, during a healthcare breach, came across data that we believe belongs to your organization. So they put us in contact with the FBI. We trust but verify it was them. They
yeah,
gave us this link,
of course.
right? And we were looking at these files on the dark web, file names, going to the client site, matching file name by file name, a spreadsheet, Word document. You know, holy crap, looks like this client got breached. But
Uh-huh.
here's the difference. As the files were going to the dark web, opening them up with Excel, opening up with Word, full text, reading it, and it was really confidential, sensitive data. Internal systems are showing that the data is protected and encrypted. So we looked at the logs of the files. At some point, those same files were decrypted and sent to a third party. So we matched all those files, each. It was the third party's network that got breached, not our client. So we were able to legally show the chain of custody, the third party or the access care organization in the healthcare sector breached their confidentiality agreement. And that was a simple example that we were able to show the proof of concept. The other,
So they thought you
yeah,
weren't to protect him, and then you said no, that we did. So
we
they
did, and it was your vendor who you work with that has copies of your files,
so do
and
you
they were like,
you look at their whole path of data and go, we got to fix.
we had yeah, this tool actually shows logs of chain of custody where files were decrypted, went to the third party via email.
How do you stop
With
that from happening? That's what my question is.
what's
Like,
that?
how do you stop that from happening? If they have all these other partners, do you have to work with their partners to make sure their data is they actually keep this?
Well, that's part of it, but they know as a third party they're supposed to keep that data protected. They didn't.
Yeah.
So that's the way it usually happens, unfortunately. We keep data dynamically protected with the Actifile tool, but that's where I think we 6 months ago where we got stuck in tool land, educating people what the tool does as opposed to bigger pictures. This is the invisible liability of the firms are experiencing. We detect it and quantify it. That's a different conversation.
Are you selling more of a service and is it Actifile it's called?
Actifile is a tool and a solution, but we sell it as a service as well. So
So you advise, implement, onboard, and be almost like a fractional. Um,
CISO.
yeah,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of you, and when or why should they get a hold of you?
Well, if they think that they can't answer this fundamental question, which says, do you know what data that's unstructured, which is Word documents, Word PDF documents that might be regulated or unregulated, sensitive data. If you don't know, if you can't quantify that, show where it is, where it resides, who's using it. And if that were to be stolen from your environment, what would that liability look like? If you can't answer that, give us a call.
How do
Reach out to James at ideaBOX.com,
Mhm.
and we could certainly help them out and point them in a direction and work with them on that.
And what's the website? And is there any folks?
www.ideabox.com. Be easy just to reach us.
Okay. Well, thanks for being part of this great podcast. And guess who the sponsor is? Full Throttle Falato Elite. So I'll show a little
Love
video.
it.
All right. Thanks, James.
Great. Thank you.